technologically, I don't know if advanced is the right word, but in step, and always improving. We appreciate that. All right, without further ado, let's call this meeting of the Addison Central.
Recording in progress.
All right, go again. Let's call this meeting the Addison Central School District to order this day, August 8th. And we'll start with introductions. We'll do something a little new and different. I'll go, and then we'll have our other Zoom folks go, and then we'll hit the live folks on Charles Ave. So I'm Victoria Jetty.
I'm Jamie McCallum.
I'm Lindsay Hescott.
Great, and then in the room, why don't we start with Suzanne, who's gonna step in if my internet fails, or she's gonna be my eyes on the ground.
Suzanne Buck,
Steve Orzek. Brian Bauer.
Barb Wilson,
Mary Heather Noble.
Joanna Doria.
Mary Gill.
Peter Conlon. Peter Rose, Superintendent. Will Hatch, Technology Director. Chip Malcolm.
Jen Newcedar.
and
Jen Kravitz, Principal of Mary William. Nicole Carter, Director, Equity and Student Services.
Caitlin Steele, Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning.
that is all of us, Victoria.
Great, thank you very much. All right, so now it's time for public comment. If there's anyone interested in giving a public comment, please either raise your Zoom hand, or I can't tell if there's any public in the room. Raise your hand in the room, and either Suzanne or I will call on you.
No hands raised in the room, Victoria.
Okay. How about
I do not see any raised online.
okay, nor do I. All right, we'll move on then with a recommendation to approve the minutes.
I'll make a recommendation that we approve the minutes.
I second that.
Great. Any questions, comments for the minutes? All right, all those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Suzanne abstains.
Peter,
Anyone else?
Mary Gill, and Joanna.
There we go. All right, thank you. And on to Dr. Malcolm, the bill.
Always, this is such a joy. There's a bunch of them, so bear with me. We didn't have two meetings. There's the general fund number read on the 2nd of July of $258,640.32. Second grouping were read on the 18th of July, and there's a general fund number of $737,327.52. Straight here. Then there's a payroll warrant read on the 18th of July, $7,834.80. Another payroll warrant of $10,556.24.
Chip, can you repeat that, please?
I'm gonna give you these.
Okay.
Okay, it's simpler.
Okay.
And then another payroll warrant of $208,756.22. And another payroll warrant of $1,708.05. And the final payroll warrant of $2,010.87. Told you to bear with me. The third reading was on the 8th, on the 1st of August. We had a general fund amount of $905,905.30. $1,000,000.37. A payroll warrant of $13,432.02. Payroll warrant of $243,194.60. And the last one is a payroll warrant of $2,961.53. My questions that were all answered from Michelle that I had, Barbara read them all, and we're comfortable with that, and I make a motion to pay, we authorize paying or having paid all these bills.
I'll second.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments for the finance team? All right, I don't see any. All those in favor of approving the bills as stated, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed?
No,
Any abstentions?
no.
Great, the bills are approved. And on to professional appointments. We'll start with the motion, and then if there's any questions, we can discuss. Can I get a motion to approve the professional appointments as found in our board materials?
I'll move to approve the professional appointments and changes.
Second?
Great. Any questions or comments?
I have
Barb?
Barb?
Yeah. I noticed on here, there's a new position. I think it's new, Dean of School Climate and Culture.
I raised.
Oh,
my hand.
you were-
raised
you
your
tried
hand
to
just
go.
now, yeah.
He was trying to get me. Okay, good.
I was gonna just, not sure about that. So, we, had our 1-year assistant principal position open at Mom's. And, went through, an interview process, talked to a bunch of people. And, through that process, we, interviewed Esther Charleston, who is, some of you may know her. She was on our advisory committee. She's, on the Woodbury Select Board as well. And she had applied for the position. The team was really impressed by her, by what they felt like she would bring to the middle school with its focus this year, and which we've discussed previously. She was not able to get an admin license, so we essentially shifted that ESSER-funded position from an AP to a dean position. Those of you who were around a number of years ago remember that we used to have a dean at Mom's, maybe 6-7 years ago or so. So we have history there of having a dean, but I think especially with our co-principal model and having a dean, it was actually both co-principals were really excited about that, and we're really excited to welcome her to the Mom's community. So that's kind of the genesis for that position.
Okay, thank you.
Jen?
Will it still be a 1-year position?
Yeah.
Jen again?
Just kidding.
Why did you just keep asking questions?
I only was approved for one.
You should say I have two.
I wasn't sure if I did at the time, depending on the answer. Are there still some outstanding positions, like, classroom teacher positions that are in the works? I feel like I know of one, at least one, that I don't think that I've seen come through yet. So just kind of thinking about an update in general of where we stand. And I know Shoreham had quite a few open, and are we looking okay?
So I was gonna do that in my superintendent
Okay.
report. I can do it now too.
You do.
Why don't we get them, since there's a motion on the table, why don't we
Okay.
do it in your superintendent's report?
Okay.
All right, are there other questions? All right, we have a motion on the table, so all those in favor of approving the professional appointments, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
No.
Great, professional appointments have been approved. And now, on to the report of the superintendent.
Great, here we are, okay. So staffing, just to give you kind of an update from when we last met, there's been lots and lots of work that's been happening statewide. You've probably seen a lot of things nationally too. In my Google News feed, because I always follow these kinds of things, I keep getting, articles about this school in Minneapolis, this district here, this district there, scrambling to fill positions. So it's something that is definitely happening nationally. It's also really hitting Vermont as well. The kind of the din of this topic got so strong that Jeff Francis, who is the BSA executive director, kind of organized a meeting to bring superintendents together to talk about what are you doing, what's the impact in your district, what's the extent of the number of, what kinds of positions, how many, those kinds of things. So some of you may have seen I was on TV, I think, about it last week or 2 weeks ago.
We missed
Apparently
that.
no one's
Sorry.
No,
It's summer, it's summer.
Okay.
Send us the link, we'll watch
It
it.
Yes.
wasn't great, they didn't take the best parts of this, they took this like weird, how when you say all these things and they take like,
Yeah.
what, you took that?
Yeah.
Anyway, total aside, but, the statewide, in terms of like where statewide things are, I think there are some districts that are still looking for a number of licensed elementary positions, are really having to get creative around how they're gonna staff schools. So that is happening in certain places. Franklin County is really hit. They tend to have a hard time because a lot of folks go to Franklin County and then go down to Chittenden County after they've had a couple years of experience. That's kind of a pathway. I know Barry was particularly hard hit and had lots of open positions. We are, in terms of ACSD, I think did really well since we last met. We filled all of the positions, the elementary positions, which were the kind of the last ones to fill in Salisbury, which was a late hire. Bjarke, when was that hire?
Late June, but it took us a little while because of some stuff with us.
So it was in July, kind of, that finalized. And then our positions in Shoreham, which we were kind of starting to strategize, if we don't fill these positions, here's how we might respond. So we have been able to fill all of those positions. You saw on the appointments today that we did have a late resignation. She left the state and moved to Massachusetts, I think. And so we are still, that is an open position, that PE position right now is an open position. Other than that, we have, as I've said before, we still have a number of paraprofessional positions that have been filled. Those are both general parapositions and intensive needs parapositions. We have talked a lot about this as a leadership team. We talked about it, we were in this room all day today, doing mostly kind of operations work, and had a short conversation around how we might start to think about, if we can't fill all these positions, how we're going to kind of shift and kind of change things to support all students coming into the new year. And I've made it a priority to really try to help all of us focus on being grounded at the start of the year and giving principals the ability to do the work that they need to do, which is building community and being with people. And that's going to be a focus for the district this year as well. Last year, as you know, and those of you who sub know, that it was kind of all hands on deck, and every day was kind of a new puzzle in terms of figuring out how to make all that coverage happen. I know Jen can speak for hours probably about her experiences from last year. We have some special ed positions that are still open. That seems to be kind of a running thing. SLP too, school psychologist. So we have some positions that are still open that we're actively trying to fill. But I would say overall, other than our one-to-one para positions, which we would like to fill, and you all remember that the board did support an increase. We moved from $1 an hour additional to $4 an hour, which has made an impact. We're going to be pushing to get word out more. I was talking with Emily about maybe doing some kind of para fair or something like that to get the word out. That may be something the board might want to take part in, be a part of. So I think we're in a, as things are, I feel like we're in a good position right now in terms of staffing. Obviously, we'd like to fill all these positions, but.
Mary Heather?
Peter, can you give us a sense of the volume of open positions and paras, and just so we have an idea?
Sure.
Magnitude.
It's probably around 10 intensive services paras right now.
And
Is
the
that-
distribution of the district?
Nicole, is that accurate? About 10?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I would say 10 to 15 is what the terms.
And the distribution over the district, is that, or is that just not?
I don't know if we've come down with final assignments yet to say, right?
Yeah, I would say it's final.
Okay.
We are a couple custodians. We have academic interventionist positions. We have new positions that are 1 year only that we haven't been able to fill. So these are ESSER funded positions that are still open. That's kind of the biggest thing. We have 4 special educator positions. Are those some of those new, Nicole?
As far as I know, we're down to 3.
Okay. 4 did sound high. So that's kind of the crux of it, is those 10 to 15 intensive needs paras. And with SLPs, with some of these positions that are hard to fill, we've had to contract some of that. So we use presence learning, and we're going to be doing that again this year because we're never able to fully staff SLPs. And with special educators, down to 3 positions, Nicole will be working with her team to figure out how to share caseloads and make any kind of potential moves and shifts. The special ed department is more accustomed to, I think, kind of flowing where needed, just because it's, in 1 year, especially in a small school, you could have two students, and then the next year you could have 10, and it really ebbs and flows. So there is kind of a lot of movement in the special ed department. But you will be invited to the para fair.
Is that your hand up?
I can't wait.
Well, I'm assuming there's
Mary
still leeway for board members to volunteer and sub. Is that still the case or not?
It's not the case this
It's not
year,
the
no.
case this year.
No.
Not even volunteering?
Nope.
Okay.
Mary Gill, did you have a question?
I just had a question. How many provisional licensing requests have you made for the professional positions? Any?
A lot.
A lot, okay.
Yeah, I get, so the person at the AOE, Ron Ryan, who does licensing, sends an email to me and copies the applicant and Sharon, or now Heather, and I've gotten lots of those emails over the last couple weeks.
Yeah.
And it's funny, in the meeting today, I was talking about staffing shortages with our leaders, and 10 minutes before I spoke, an email came from the AOE that stated, here's what to do with staffing shortages, and they have a kind of a bulleted list of these are the kind of things you need to be aware of as you're seeking to fill open positions. And a lot of it is about licensure and how to get emergency licensure or provisional licensure. And I think for most, right now, it's kind of more about emergency as opposed to provisional. Provisional is for people that are on the way.
Yeah.
And need a little bit more time to get there. Whereas emergency, Peter might say, I want to be a teacher. And but I don't want to do it long-term, but I'm willing to step in, that's the kind of situation where you can get an emergency license. If you're interested.
I'm gonna twist your arm.
He's on the board, so
So,
you can't do that.
Steve Orzick had his hand up.
I know it's still early days, but how are how's the sub shaking out? Are you gonna continue to do the premium for days in a row? And
We are
that could,
planning on continuing that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 day
right,
approach, which I think set us apart from other districts, and hopefully helped. It was kind of hard to tell sometimes. I haven't heard from Gail yet in terms of what the current numbers, other than just, she said anecdotally, she feels good coming into this year with the sub list that she has, and I don't know,
okay.
I didn't get any more specificity than that.
Okay, because I know Bridport had a particular problem last year. So there were real hot spots
Yeah.
around subbing that I just would hate for us to have that again this year. So.
Well, and I haven't heard, a lot of the increased need for subs was the, need to quarantine and all that. And I haven't yet heard in terms of the state what I know the CDC is talking about some changes. I don't know what they are, but that will or will not impact, well, either way, it's going to impact subs and attendance for sure. So that'll be something that.
But last year, the shortage of teachers and the shortage of paras was particularly stressful on the sub because he didn't have someone that would call a sub in. There were some people that dropped out, they burned out.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Joanna, just a minute. Mary, was it your hand up again?
No.
Okay, so Joanna.
I guess I just like clarity around the volunteering piece. So is that just something that board members aren't encouraged to volunteer before last year? Or like why?
The ability to get paid is what I was talking about, not volunteering.
Okay,
Oh,
but I thought that was, okay, so you can still like drive for field trips and.
I think so, yeah. I don't think there's anything.
Right.
Yeah,
That would be my question too.
yeah.
And is that the no board members subbing, is that something that AOE didn't write like a waiver for this year?
They last year said, if you have, if you want to apply for this to allow board members to, be paid, then you can basically do that. And so we said, yes, we'd like to. And I think I sent all board members' names today.
Got it.
But I think it was part of like a COVID kind of response thing.
But we can volunteer.
Well, I think historically, is that, Peter, in your recollection, is
I
that?
never remember there being any problem.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay, cool.
I don't see any more hands up, Victoria.
Can I keep going though?
Sure.
you keep going.
Okay, keep going. So in this vein, just talking about what we do to support teachers and support incoming teachers, something that we've been talking a lot about, and Caitlin has been leading a group. She's been in charge of our induction model for a number of years, right? 5 years, 6 years.
This is my 7th year.
So all years you've been here, right? From day one. And so we've got an exciting new model that's been kind of co-created with teachers and administration. Do you want to share just a little bit about it?
Sure, so we have had all of the time that I've been here, a one-day orientation and a sort of minimalist mentor model where our mentors have earned $700, been assigned to mentees and asked to support them, but not with a lot of structure or teeth to that. And every year we've had a mentor coordinator from the faculty. It happens to have been a high school person every year I've been here, 3 different ones in the last 6 years. And every year I've connected with that person and said, we really need not an orientation, but an induction model. And every year there's been, yes, absolutely. And we've just had a lack of sort of time, funding, focus. So last year, that obviously became very important to us to really strengthen our new teacher orientation and induction model and our mentor program to create a better sense of community, to create more coherence in a year-long warm welcome, and hopefully to really support staff retention over time. We had a little bit of extra money in Title II at the end of the year, and so I wrote a small grant investment to pay ACSD staff to come together and imagine a better model. And the interest in that was really exciting. We had a small group of about 8 people come together on the last teacher day of the year at 8 in the morning, excited to tackle this. We had 3 people from the elementary level, 2 from the middle level, 2 from the high school level, plus some of our coordinators. So it was a nice team. They spent an hour or 2 just putting heads together, generating ideas. And then it was 5 or 6 of them that we actually put on MOUs to do 5 days of collaboration in June, because we had to spend our Title II money before it evaporated at the end of June. They came together, gave us a proposal that's really thoughtful. It's not sort of all of the whistles and bells that we would like to build toward over time, but it's sort of simple and lean enough that we're really hoping to roll it out for the new year. So we are reimagining our new teacher orientation. We'll still do that the day before Free Week, but we're hoping it will be less of a drinking from the fire hose experience, because then we will continue to bring our mentors and mentees together for a meeting every month through the course of the year. And we'll now have 2 mentor coordinators, one at the elementary level and one at the secondary level, who will co-facilitate that calendar of events, bringing in guest speakers and working with the core text. So it's an improvement. It's currently a 1-year induction model with lots of ideas for how to expand it into a 2 or more year model, but those are expensive. And so we need some more time to decide what the priorities are and imagine the next iteration of this. So I feel really excited that the thing that was the most exciting to me was the level of energy and care and enthusiasm that ACSD educators brought to that last day of the contract year and then continued to work through June on this project. That's what gives me the most hope about it. It's they're feeding their continued positive energy into new staff coming on this year. Yeah, exciting.
And a big thrust behind that is, as we look at really kind of like making this a sustainable and joyful and rewarding experience for employees, that we're really focused on helping them as they come in and then providing those supports long-term, as Caitlin said. So I'm really excited about this. I think it's going to have an impact and will probably have an impact in terms of the development we're doing on our supervision and evaluation model, and how we look at how shifts in that could potentially also support more kind of peer-to-peer work with teachers as well. One other thing I wanted to.
I just have a
Yeah.
question about, as teachers were leaving last year, you had exit interviews?
Yeah.
Did you glean anything from that helps in this induction process to retain?
Not necessarily in a mentor relationship. I think more in terms of like what employees might need, and thinking about leadership and kind of both building leadership and district leadership probably. Yeah, nothing specifically about this, but I'll be talking about that later.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't see any more questions for you, so if you're going to continue.
Okay. I just wanted to mention, we had our administrative retreat last week, and it was really, really powerful. It feels like this summer has been really good to people in terms of just being able to, I wouldn't say we had a completely normal summer, but I see people, and I saw the team rested in a way that I haven't seen in a long time. And that's really, really important as we get ready for the school year and, we talk a lot about recovery and catch up from the pandemic. We have that to do, and we also have to kind of like come back together as a community. And the fact that our leaders are in that space right now is really powerful, and it's going to be important as we get started. So I just wanted to share that I'm very excited about kind of where our leaders are right now and the work they're going to do. We have lots of new leaders too. We've got one in the back there. He plays a mean guitar, if you didn't know that. So I'm just feeling, like I said, I'm feeling really hopeful. And our big focus this year is going to be building community. And as we get started, that's what I'll be talking about on our Welcome Back event and what we'll be prioritizing throughout the year as we kind of get our feet back under us and move forward. And we've got lots of great work happening, so I think we're poised and ready to go.
Barb?
Couple questions. First, the welcome back,
Yeah.
when is that? And I'm assuming that's
It's
something.
Wednesday, the 20. Wednesday, the 24th.
And I'm assuming that's something that we can attend as board members.
Oh, yeah. There's invitation is always.
Yeah.
Always
Cool,
goes out.
cool.
Yeah.
I enjoyed, that was
Yeah.
really interesting last year. It was
Yeah.
helpful. The other question I have, when we were looking at some of our results, especially in math, we talked about part of the issue is that we no longer have a math coordinator. And what would be next steps on that kind of position again? Or is there
So
something that we would do there?
we do have kind of, in terms of how we've separated our IB coordinators, do have more kind of concentration. Kayla, do you want to talk a little bit about?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So as Peter's talking about with the IB coordinators, at the secondary level, grades 6 through 12, really 6 through 10, the MYP coordinators. One of them is humanities focused. That's Eileen Sears, who was a Lang Lit teacher at Mums for quite some time. She replaced Courtney Cron, who was also an English teacher. And the other is a math science focused, predominantly math. That's Pam Quinn, veteran Mums teacher as well. So each support about half of the departments. So obviously Pam supports math, Eileen will support Lang and Lit, but then they support the other departments that they don't have as much background in as well. We don't have that same level of specialization with the elementary PYP coordinators. Joy Dobson covers PK2, so that grade band, and Brandy Corbett covers grades 3 through 5. So we divide it by grade band. They both have a lot of experience in math, but it's not their job to be the leads on that. The last time that we surfaced the idea of a math coordinator was in our ARP-ESSER public spending plan. And when we put that out for stakeholder engagement, and then even before it got to public comment, the pushback that we got, the resistance that we got, was not to have any more away from student leadership roles, and instead to emphasize student-focused roles. And so we turned it into a math interventionist position, and that's what ate that funding up. So if we want to have a conversation about coordinator, I mean, it's possible we could reconcile our ESSER grants in September and find that there's some money and we could pitch the concept again. I'm not sure that we might get the same kind of resistance that it did before. So I guess that the next opportunity would be to look at it in our budget cycle, if that's a thing that feels like a top priority. We don't have one person who's a math expert working the whole continuum of support for the district.
Yeah, because if I recall, Jessica Lynch used to be that person, right?
And then she became a
And then-
coordinator.
Exactly. In
Right.
fact, I met her way before I was involved in this, and I was intrigued what she was doing. And it seemed like during that period, our math scores at the elementary level looked, and then they've gone down. And so,
The professional development that the district was investing in for math, when Jessica was in that lead role and playing a leading role in that work, was really powerful. And those teachers who were there then still remember it and still talk about it.
yeah.
So I do think that it would be valuable to revisit that at some point. And
Yeah.
also we can't actually do all of the things at
Oh,
once,
I know.
so.
Caitlin, can you speak a little bit to, I feel like there's a disconnect if you're hearing from teachers that they prefer positions that are dealing with, directly with students, which I understand, but yet those who've experienced having a math coordinator pine for those years. What's, I'm not understanding where the disconnect is.
You know, we have a lot of different conversations and hear different people's voices in different contexts. And so in one context, teachers will remember fondly some really powerful professional development and wish we could go back to that. And then in another context, teachers will, and not just teachers, but all sorts of members of our community will recognize a real need to get direct supports directly to students who need them. And I think that those voices are in tension with one another, and sometimes one rises to the top versus the other. I don't know that we have solved how to scientifically analyze competing voices in our community. But both of those things are real. We really could use more coordination, and we really could use more direct services to students. And so at this point, the wind seems to be blowing in the direction of emphasizing more direct support to students.
And what we're talking about here too is public input on prescribed federal dollars, right?
True.
You know, I think as we do budget development and we think about, this is especially true once the ESSER funds are dried up, we'll be really like putting forward our recommendation of, these are the positions that we think we really need to keep, these are the ones that we're gonna have to let go. You know, we've been adding and adding positions here that aren't general funded, and it's gonna be a, you know, somewhat of a stark reality when those positions are all of a sudden not funded anymore. And I think it's understandable that right now people want to hire positions to work with kids, because we see that over the last number of years, there's so much need, you see that. So I think it makes sense that that's where the public, that's where our community feels right now. I think as we look ahead and we look at what the needs of our students are, and again, this is something that I think you have to do anytime you're hiring a coordinator or an administrator or any kind of position like that. We really have to like share what the impact is over time, and the fact that the system requires that kind of support to continue to grow. That without that, you just get kind of this organic siloed approach, which, you know, as we know, is really haphazard. And if our focus is equity and bringing all students up, we can't just hope that it works out. So anyway, I think that's something that we'll be talking about and thinking about it. What's the next kind of iteration of all of those kinds of positions? Because we have the literacy coordinator right now, which is ESSER funded. We've got an after-school position that we haven't been able to fill. That's ESSER funded. We have, what's the other coordinator position? Is there one more?
We had an SEL coordinator that we did not refill. We've got a pre-K coordinator in the grant.
Yeah.
But I also, can I add one more thing about that? We would struggle we would not be able to do the level of investment in math PD now that we did in the past, because we have other things that we've really prioritized. So literacy is getting a very large focus over a few ESSER funded years. We're also really investing in responsive classroom and restorative practices, responsive classroom K-8 and restorative practices 9-12, to really rebuild that sense of community and connection in our schools and that foundation for positive behavior. So we actually have, and we're really working on strengthening our multi-tiered systems of support with a focus on response to intervention. We've got big things that we're going deep on, that RTI and MTSS, those acronyms, they should help with the math challenge. Not in the same large-scale way that the best practices in math did about a decade ago. But, as we shore up those systems, we should be able to make some professional intellectual space to go big on math again. I think the reality is we can't do all things at once, and we'll have to continue to cycle our focus to stay sharp.
And I also, to add to that, I think when Jessica came to the math position, speaking for my own students, by the time they hit middle school, had already been through, my daughter had been through 4 different math programs. She came out here in 7th grade, and my son had been through 3 totally different math programs. Like, they bought the whole thing in new, they started it, ran it for a couple of years or 2, and then switched to something else. So it was like they constantly kept changing. And so when Jess took the position, there was a lot of PD involved in trying to get a math program to continue on a continuum and not just keep switching.
And that program is still in place.
Is Bridges still?
Bridges is still the K-5 math program.
And so we must have some in-district sort of leads or experts on Bridges. So there's sort of probably internal professional development for new teachers and to support teachers. I mean, I know of one that I'm friendly with that,
Well, there's a handful
like
of
she
them.
does that as like a side job in the summer in other districts as well. So
Yes.
yeah, so it's not like
Yes,
there's no
absolutely.
professional development happening. We've had this program and they're working together.
They're all from Salisbury.
That's why I know them.
So we've lost Victoria for a moment, but Barb?
Well, on the TV, are they still on Zoom, just not
She's
on
still
the
on
TV?
Zoom, yeah.
Okay,
There she is, yay.
So
Yeah, you didn't lose me. I didn't get lost.
TV fell asleep.
So, and I guess why this is so near and dear to my heart is seeing, my, fortunate, that I was able to actually sub last year, which was really a wonderful experience, but especially a lot in math. I just feel that if you can't pull up the elementary, right, you'll see more of what I saw and the diversity and in the class, and some kids struggling with 3rd grade, 4th grade concepts, even though they're an 8th grader. It just broke my heart, and so I'll probably always kind of harp on this because it's
Great.
near and dear to my heart.
It's important to keep it.
It's
I don't see any hands raised online, and I don't see any more here.
All right. Peter, do you have more or?
That's it for now.
The agenda talks about a discussion.
Oh, yeah, that was a handoff actually
Handoff, yes.
to other folks closer to this, but I just put it on the report of the superintendent. Would those people?
Those people.
Go ahead, people.
So, over the summer, the Career Center has been working on finding, first we started looking for a permanent superintendent. We did offer a position, but that person ended up with a family issue and so did not take the job. So by the time that person said no, we were into end of June, beginning of July. We had already interviewed 2 people that were thinking they'd like the interim superintendent position. We called back one who, the day we called him was his very last day serving as a superintendent in York, Pennsylvania. He said, give me a couple of days. I'm at my retirement party. He called back and he says, my wife is curious about this. So we interviewed him. Members of the Career Center interviewed him. Dr. Burrows had a afternoon Zoom.
Yep.
He Zoomed. Patrick Green was in person, I believe. And at the end of all of that, everyone felt that we should reach out to this person and see if he was interested in doing a one-year interim. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. No housing, sort of housing. Well, we got housing, but oh, wait a minute, the person that has the key to the house isn't available. And so everything is sort of, fingers crossed, fallen into place. He has a place to live starting August 15th for a couple of months, then he's moving to another place. Dan French has given him his blessing but he has to have his license by September 30th. He'd already applied to the licensing board. Like in July, he applied. So we're hoping that the licensing board can get things done before September 30th. If not, then Dan says, I guess, see ya. I don't really know. I've never been in that boat before. So,
Get an extension.
Yeah.
or something. So his name is Dr. Timothy Williams, has several, quite a bit of superintendent positions behind him. He's got career work behind him, so he's very well thought of in the communities that he comes from. And I think he will do quite well as an interim person for the Career Center, and we will send the search out probably the end of October, get ahead of everyone else. But I think we have a seasoned candidate that will be in the position for a year and will really help things move forwards. And the board felt really good about this individual, and all the comments that came from the teachers, from students, from other professionals, all said, they leaned towards, we really like them. So there weren't any negative comments. So there's your update. And the staff found out just before you guys did, so. Peter.
Is there, in terms of the timeline for the permanent position, are you gonna get that in early fall, late fall? What's the?
It'll go back out again in October sometime, probably the end of October.
You're aware that there's a.
Great, well, congratulations.
Whoops.
Hey, Victoria, hang on. Steve was
Steve wants
just
to
about
say
to
something.
say something.
There is a consulting firm that we retained, and they're we're following their advice as to when to move on to the next thing. And they wanted us to get a permanent because then, they don't get any more money for this next search. So.
I don't.
Yeah, so we're kind of being guided by what they're, the lead that they're setting, so.
But they'll also be with us, so they'll help
Right.
set goals for the first year. They'll be with the board and, the interim for this year, they'll be with the board and the permanent all of the following year, and then probably for another full year after that, because they really want to make sure their candidates are successful and that they work well in the districts that they help place them in. So, and the other thing is that the amount that we paid for this firm was basically the same dollar value as VSBA. So.
All right, are there any questions for Suzanne? Great. Well, congratulations.
Thank
We
you.
all look forward to meeting him. All right, so on to the report of the board. I believe Jen Kravitz is in the room to chat with us a little bit about a Mid-Chilton Fund request.
Yeah, thanks. So I think that you all got the request, and for those of you who don't remember, the McJilton Fund was set up in 1950. That benefits kind of the expanded opportunities for students at Mary Hogan. and was originally, the ID4 board originally oversaw it, and now it's you all. So, it's been a pretty wonky, with COVID coming, to think about, or with COVID in the past, to have a regular distribution, but since it seems like a mostly normal year, we can feel like we can project out a little bit. So there are a couple of requests, and there will be a second. I'll come back and see you all later in the year. Yeah.
Jen, the board did not
Oh,
get the request, so we don't have
Great.
any idea as to what you're referring to, and I
I am
apologize for that.
so sorry. I had thought that it would be included, so I
It isn't,
apologize.
it's not in the document, sorry.
Peter, how would you like me to share that document so that people have it? I
Why
can
don't you
talk
just-
through it.
Yeah, why don't you just share it
Yeah.
with me and then I'll
I
send it
think
to
you
the
have it, but I'll share it. Yeah. So I can talk through it and Peter will share it with you. So I apologize and thank you so much for letting me know.
I was looking for it.
Yeah.
Didn't
Yeah.
think I missed it.
No, sorry.
Did you send it to Heather or?
Yeah.
Okay.
I sent it to
Should I
Heather
have it forwarded?
and Logan a while ago,
Okay.
so. Let me know if you, do you want me, Victoria, would you like me to?
Yeah, why don't you just keep going and
Sure.
we can get it.
I just
you know,
sent it.
Great.
Okay.
So, there are a number of requests. Some are ones that will come in the spring and some are ones that will be in the fall, but, I tried to project out, based on past history of kind of what normal years look like, as well as knowing some of the things coming up. So the first request is for $1,200 to complete our artist in residency with Mike Kin. Originally, this was a residency that was supposed to be concluded by the end of this past calendar year, but due to some unforeseen changes, we had to extend it into the next fiscal year, which basically meant that one of the grants that we had couldn't cover all of it. So just asking for an additional $1,200 to complete the artist in residency that, because it bumped into a new fiscal year. The second one is an all-school read celebrating diversity. This is this came out of the work that we've been doing over the past 2.5 years around anti-racism, anti-bias, and this was a proposal by 2 Mary Hogan teachers that's based on what has been going on in South Burlington, and it will be a year-long project where each grade will have one read aloud. The whole school will have one read aloud each month, along with associated lessons around inclusion and diversity. They've worked pretty closely with the teachers in South Burlington who have done this, and so this $1,000 would basically allow us to get one copy per grade of each of the books for the year. And it's a model that, again, we're trying and we'll tweak along the way, but it's really kind of staff passion that brought this to the fore, which is pretty cool. The rest of the grants are proposals are just ones that the board has seen before. Funding for Shakespeare at Elementary, $3,500, with the hope that we can do Shakespeare in the fall this year. That ask is out to Lindsay Pontius, but the idea with the 5th grade teachers really saw the team coming together and wanting to have that experience in the fall. $6,000 for PE experiences. Some of those are a little amorphous right now because it will depend on whether the college will allow us to use the pool for swimming. And that will just, depending on that, will influence what the PE experiences are, but the idea is that there are additional PE experiences per grade. The town hall theater experience, $3,500 to allow K4 to attend a show at the town hall theater. We usually work with them on that, and I haven't yet done that because I wanted to make sure the funding was there. And then about $1,900 for Keewaydin, that's a rough estimate. There may be some adjustment in that. 19,000, thank you. 19,000, extra by a factor of 10. And that is based on their, it's like $285 per student, and we have about 65 students in the fifth grade. And that would be in the spring. So the total request for the fall is $34,200. The available cash is more than that, so $45,993.91 or 71 cents. So you'd have about 11,700 left. And the annual distribution generally comes in March, if I'm remembering correctly, and that would be an additional $40,000. So
I'll move that we approve the general fund request.
Question before you move.
Well, we can second it and then we'll go to questions.
I'll second.
I think that if I mistake, just let me know. I think that the books that were mentioned in terms, I think, was diversity. I think is an issue that these books need to be reviewed before this is implemented. I think that parents might have a view on what they want their students to be introduced to. And I think it's very important for the board to know what these books have in them that these kids are going to be learning about.
I'll make a comment on that. I have grandchildren in the South Burlington School District, and they're elementary school students and going into middle school, and they talk about these books, and they seem, to me, I'm very heartened by the fact that they get a very open and empathetic view of various diverse people in our community. So I'm thrilled to think that you were following something that has been positive in that community.
Once again, this is a different community, different sets of parents, different sets of kids. And I'm sure that when it was first implemented in Burlington, that the parents might have had a look at what those books were about first.
So I will say that we have learned from South Burlington and have taken books, not just like taken a whole year. This is the third year that they've done it, and they've refined over time. And then I know that there's like a selection policy that you all just passed. Julie Altimos, who is our librarian, who knows a lot about the selection policy because she selects a lot of books for Mary Hogan, has seen and has reviewed the books, and has actually already taught some of the books in her library lessons, or teachers have said, oh, I already have that book. So it's not necessarily books that kids have already read, but some have read, and so that's, I just want to assure you that like the books have been reviewed by the librarian as well as by myself. And
Once again, I think when the discussion was made here before the board in terms of book selection, I objected to the fact that one individual would be making the choices and the parents would be left out. And I would still voice that objection. But I think what you're doing is great.
Mary Heather?
Well, I would respond to this as well. I think the fact that some of these materials have already been incorporated into curriculum, we've not heard any complaints. They have been vetted by our librarian who works in coordination with the teachers, and I presume other librarians, especially the South Burlington district. It seems to me that we have professionals on the job, and there is a process by which parents or whomever has objections to material can follow with our policy. So I guess I feel like we're covered, but.
I guess I would also say that we're not going to like hide this from parents. We will be sharing the book titles with parents. We'll be talking about like this is some of, there's material that goes with each of the books that has been developed with South Burlington, and also like we've refined it a little bit based on kind of our students, and so that will be going out to parents in newsletters.
That's excellent.
So it's not like we're doing this without telling parents.
Great.
Jen?
So these are all great things, and it's awesome that you have this funding to do this. And so just with like my sort of equity in the district hat on, and just thinking about shared experiences that all elementary school children get a chance to have an opportunity to participate in. I'm just wondering if at the leadership level, there's been conversations about some of these types of capstone events, like the Shakespeare, like Key weighed in, and rather than funding individually with, either, fundraised funds at, that we worked really hard at Salisbury to get those kids to Key Waden every year, and maybe there are some schools who can't do that. If that's something that we wanted to try to incorporate at the budget level, and maybe as a shared experience for sixth graders now that they're all at the middle school together, or things like that. And just, not that I don't want to approve this, it's just making me think, wow, how lucky that you have 19,000 at your disposal when we are bake sailing and hustling for every nickel and dime to get those kids to Key Waden.
Yeah, it's something
We
that
don't
we.
have that.
Yeah, and some
about.
don't have it. I didn't
And
think
we
so
had
did.
I think we had 6 or 7.
I think we did, and that's unfortunate that
Yeah.
one didn't get a chance to go last year.
Yeah,
And that's,
yeah.
it was just a conversation I had with a fellow teacher this weekend at a family party
Yeah.
that made
totally.
me think about it.
So yeah, it's something that we're talking about, and as you know, like these funds are.
Strictly for Mary Hogan.
I don't know if it's even possible.
No. No, I don't think this funding is, but
Yeah.
as a school board, we could, and if
Absolutely.
leadership felt it was important, we could incorporate it into our budget as designated funds for certain activities.
Yep.
If we felt like they were important enough that every school is trying to do them.
And we up to this point, we've been kind of helping and supporting schools that want to do those things. So, we kind of like at the central office try to help in, financially in ways that we can, making that happen. And these are the kinds of things that I think all elementary principals, Key Waden is, as an example, is like a real kind of seminal and really powerful experience for kids. And, because we had 7 different elementary districts, we've been unified for 5 or 6 years. We're still kind of like in this process of like, as an elementary group, like what are the things we are all committed to? And
Right.
I think one of the things that happens as you get lots of new leaders coming in too, there's naturally you get kind of more of a people are growing in together, right, as opposed to having that previous reality and then coming in. So that is something that I see continuing to happen, and could very easily, things like that can easily be included in the budget. Of course, then it takes things that were fundraised or you use McGilton funds and puts them in the general fund, which does,
Increases.
increase costs. But
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or takes away from something else. Like
Right,
but that's it. Like I just didn't know if there were discussions. I know that certain principals have talked to me about it, like, oh, now that we're unified, maybe sixth graders all just go, and it doesn't
Yeah.
become this sort of haves and haves not schools are able to make this happen, if that's a priority. And I just didn't know if there had been more conversations at the leadership level to sort of proceed on that, and I wasn't able to get on the finance committee this year, so so this is my platform for for maybe thinking about it this year going forward.
Victoria, you're muted.
Still muted.
You're muted.
There you go.
That's funny, my mute button wouldn't unmute. Maybe it knows something I don't. We do have a motion on the table, so let's table this discussion for when we talk about budget, but I thank you, Jen, for bringing it up. So let's see, Peter Conlon moved to pass the Magilton Fund request. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, so Magilton Fund requests are granted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. All right, on to committee updates. Who'd like to start?
Chip would.
I'll start. We had a brief finance meeting before this meeting to review the fourth quarter report. We had business manager make it out in a way that was easy for us to interpret and look at, and we thank him for that. The number going into the beginning of the fourth quarter, which we thought our fund balance would end up, was about 1.1 million. And in actual fact, it ended up just a little under 1.1 million, $1,091,681. There's a number of reasons why we have a fund balance, and some of that has to do with the fact that when we budgeted for positions that we couldn't fill, then of course we're not paying those people, and we're not paying for their health insurance. And that was true both special education and regular education, so that that makes up a huge number. Now, there's other things which negate that. We had substantial we had to pay additional amount than what was budgeted for things like fuel supply and repair costs and other things through transportation. We did have the three of us, Steve, Barb, and I did have discussion regarding transportation and questions of Peter. And just because it is a big money item, it does have some risk to it. We are at the end of our either fourth year or at the beginning of our fourth or our fifth year. I don't remember. It was Brittany's trial when she had to put together the contract when it came due, when she first came on board.
This current fiscal year is the last year.
This current fiscal, okay, so we're gonna be faced with those kinds of issues. Since there's only one vendor, there were many different issues that the three of us brought up to try to research this a little more, both to know where we are in the state, what there is available, and how other systems function. There are systems that obviously have run their own transportation forever. We gave that up a long time ago for the right reasons at the time, but times change. And now we've got huge systems that basically have monopolies or are the only vendors. So that's not going to change anything tonight, obviously, but I just bring it up because it is a component. But the reason we're have the fund balance because most cases because of staff and benefits that did not have to be paid out. Luckily, it's that way and not the other way that we had to deficit spend, which we never want to do. So.
Thanks, Chip. Anybody have any questions for the finance team?
Brian,
Yes. It's gonna get worse. The transportation issues are gonna come worse, not just because you only have one vendor, but because there are fewer drivers going into that particular occupation. A lot of them are only is a tiny one in comparison to STA, which is a huge corporation. So it's not always getting what maybe you people would like them to get in terms of buses and things like that. And the other issue that's going to come up is that if this board is looking at the possibility, especially in the outlying elementary schools, of getting these kids out and seeing parts of the world beyond Addison County, you're going to have to increase that budget. And I offered a couple of possibilities. Some had to do with individual community fundraising. Some had to do with the purchase of some vans that could be utilized by schools. And it also might be purchasing a couple of buses, because what was happening this year, and I was part of it, was that there were not enough drivers and not enough buses for everybody who wanted them. That meant that things that were requested never happened. And it's not gonna get any better.
Well, I'm not saying it will.
No,
You know, what we were pointing out is that's one of the challenges, not just
Exactly.
for us, but for everywhere else in the state, is to figure out how to manage finance and find people to work in transportation.
It may be, one of the things that you probably don't know, it's a very onerous process to get a license.
I think what we just wanted to bring up was it's something that we're looking into. We didn't intend for it to become a whole discussion on the board because transportation is incredibly complicated. And I think right now, we just saying, we're asking the administration to do some work in that area.
That's good.
So, okay.
And you need a little bit more information than you have at this point, but that's up to you.
Thank you. Mary?
Yes, our policy committee has been on a hiatus since May or early June. And I heard back from almost everybody on the committee that everybody's available for our regular meeting in 2 weeks. So we'll update you once we get there. We're still trying to knock off some of the policies that need just updating. And then we have a couple of new policies. And thank you, Jamie, for reminding me about the public comment policy we took on. So.
Thank you. Mary Heather?
Yes, so the Communications and Engagement Committee met toward the end of June to quickly get out, well, we had issued communications to announce the release of the Facilities Master Plan report. That went out in the Absent Independent, it went on our website, it was in the district newsletter. And we also sent out notices and distributed copies of the report to several locations, town offices, libraries, schools, and pre-K program centers. We also put out a board update that went out in, I think, sort of late July. You all should have received a copy of that update that included updates from all of our committees. An acknowledgement of kind of staff turnover and what we're working on and working with our superintendent to address some of those issues and let's see what else. Also, as part of the release of the FMP report, I hosted 3 virtual office hours. The first one, Jamie kindly joined me, but nobody else did. So nobody has come to the virtual office hours. It was something that I felt was important to offer just in case someone had questions. I did end up scheduling an alternate meeting with Hugh McLaughlin because he couldn't attend one of the office hours. I still think it's something that we might want to consider as a board. So our committee will still be chewing on, how we might offer easy, informal ways to connect with our community. And we just look forward to welcoming Mary to our committee. And those are the things we'll be working on and coordinating with all the other committees on what y'all need to communicate.
Great. Thank you. Jen?
Good effort with the office hours. I think it's a creative idea. And at least you put it out there and made yourself available. So good idea. Facilities has been pretty busy, actually. We've been meeting, I think, every other week since our last official board meeting. We received an overview of the middle school and the high school facilities assessments and went through them with the consultant as well as with Bruce to kind of detail. Sorry, my child is golfing and it's with the thunderstorm, so I'm like blowing up over here. And my husband and I are like, "Are you in touch with him?" And the other parents know. So we're okay though.
But I just had a hole in one.
I know, but the hard stuff's not going to come down for a while. So I just want to make sure my child's not struck by lightning. Anyway, So we've received the information, we've looked over the information, we have a lot of questions about that information, and because of the extent of the anticipated facilities needs, just like maintenance needs, at the most basic level, it felt like we needed to explore what a bond might look like. And so Logan prepared that information and shared that with our committee at the last meeting. And at this point, we feel like we have information that needs to be shared with the full board. And so Victoria was going to look at the board schedule and see when we might fit in and talk about how to sort of present that information to the board to discuss next steps. Anybody else have anything to add?
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I was just asking if anybody had anything to add, but you do, because you know the next step.
No, I was just gonna say, so, yeah, that'll be in one of the next few meetings. I'll touch base with you, Jen, on timing, shortly.
Perfect. So until then, we decided our committee could take a little breather since we had been so busy throughout the summer. So until we felt like we couldn't do anything else, just our small group, and felt like we needed more guidance from the board to move forward. So unless something else comes up, we'll be taking the lead from the full board moving forward.
Mary Heather?
Actually, while we're on the topic of facilities, I don't think Jen has the answer to this, but maybe Peter, how's the kitchen redo going? Do we know? Or is that the one?
Yeah, I don't know if it's fully completed yet. The last time I talked to Bruce, I think it was very close, so I think we're on track.
Did we get a tour?
What's that?
We'll have our
We
next
get to
board
see
meeting
it?
in the kitchen.
We can arrange that.
Mary Heather?
It's very exciting, but-
Victoria, I've got a question about just kind of coordinating the presentation and information from the facilities committee with the equity strategic planning work, and kind of how that's gonna be braided in the future. Do you have a vision about which comes first, or kind of how we might look more holistically about these?
I'm sorry, I got the look more holistically at
Yeah, just,
the beginning.
you know, obviously the facilities committee has information about secondary schools and, you know, potential bond options, things like that. And then we've got information that we're awaiting from strategic planning on equity and how that all might be folded together. I'm just curious if the committee's talked about how, and Chip wants
We
to.
haven't yet really discussed, you know, sort of how those two groups of information are gonna come together. I think right now, it feels like we're still in the gathering stages, both on both sides. And so it felt like for the facilities committee, the next step would be to share the information that we do have, which is pretty much numbers and the impacts of cost on tax rates, et cetera. Sharing that with the board, really to then help give the facilities committee direction as to where we should go next.
And Chip had his hand up.
Yeah, I, that's what I was going to say, actually,
Yeah.
because we did have, this chicken and egg thing is really
Yeah.
difficult to know where you start in this process. We have data here, we have data here. We know we're gonna have to bond for whatever, in what way, which schools, how, which comes first is a really hard thing, and that's a whole board decision. So
That's
it
fine.
made sense that we do the facilities just to give people that sort of, the facilities other than the master plan we all have now, but the mums in high school numbers in a way that you could digest it a little bit. It is complicated though, and I don't know where, as a board, we should go. That's a hard one, but it's a real issue.
Yeah.
Because you can't keep waiting for the next study, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right.
At some point, you're gonna have to start.
Right, I think as a board, we're gonna need to figure out what we know, what we're waiting on, and when the appropriate, what information we need to sort of, when the appropriate time is to then make decisions. And right now, at least within the facilities committee, we feel like we don't know the answer to that.
We need help.
Are there other questions for Jen?
No, it's not a
No,
question.
oh, never mind, Peter.
When you're ready to move on to another committee.
Okay.
Next committee.
Peter Conlon.
So I'll just briefly say, the negotiations committee came out of its long hibernation briefly to review the side letter that is increasing the hourly pay for some of these one-on-one paras in order to be as competitive as possible for attracting people for those positions. We reviewed it, approved it, and I think that's already been put out there for folks to react to. That's all.
That's all.
Great.
Nice job.
All right. Jamie.
Thanks. Yeah, what are we raising it?
$4.
$4 from $1.
Yeah, it was a $1 bump for doing this work. It's now a $4 bump for doing this work.
Cool. Thank you.
And it's only for this year, correct? Or did you change
It's a
that?
side letter, so it stays in for just this year.
And it's not just for new hires, it's across the board.
Correct.
All right, if we are done with committees, is there anybody have any other topics they'd like to raise? All right, I don't see any hands. So if I could have a motion for the board to move into executive session to discuss personnel issues.
So moved.
Second.
Great, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstention. Great, we'll move into executive session at 7:53.
Well, we got it.
I'll be sending you a new link.
What's that?
I'll be sending you a new Zoom link.
So
Great, thank you.
that'll go to Jamie and Linda.